All right, let's continue where we left off. Yesterday we talked about three important investing lessons. Number one was don't put all your eggs in one basket. Instead, get a mutual fund. So that would mean don't invest just in Microsoft or just in the tech industry. Instead, you need to diversify or get a variety of stocks or companies that you are loaning money to in return for money in return. Lesson number two: buy stocks for the long term. This is not again for the short term. If you are going to need this money in a few weeks or months or even a couple years, then you shouldn't be buying stocks because this should be a long-term strategy. And important lesson number three: your gains and losses, the ups and downs of the stock market, like what we're going through right now with the coronavirus, it doesn't matter until the day that you sell or the day that you buy if you're getting into the market or adding to your stock portfolio. Well, today I wanted to look at two more important lessons. One is, and you've maybe even heard this yourselves, buy low and sell high. Buy low and sell high. This means only buy stocks when the price per stock is pretty low, and don't sell unless the stock is high. Well, what is low and what is high? It's hard to say. But in general, so right now is a perfect example of this. The stock market has plummeted on the coronavirus news. So it's definitely lower than it was. So now would not be a good time to sell, but it would be an excellent time to buy. And people who are panicking right now and selling now that it's low, not high, they are ignoring this lesson. And part of the reason they're ignoring it is because they are also ignoring number three. These losses, the dip of the stock market, it doesn't matter right now because it will eventually bounce back. At least it always has. And if it doesn't bounce back, well, then everybody's in a really bad situation. So either way, it doesn't make sense to panic and sell. The only time that it maybe would make sense to panic and sell is if they ignored lesson number two, that they need the money, maybe to pay their bills, or they're retiring, or they live off of it, or either way, if they actually need the money and they're worried about losing more, then they shouldn't have had stocks in the first place because stocks are a long-term solution. And you might be asking, well, what do I do with my stocks when I eventually need it? Well, you look for an opportunity and you get less and less risky stocks, and you maybe shift your mutual fund. You shift your mutual fund from buying stocks in companies to maybe buying savings bonds, something like that. But that's the principle here. Buy low, buy when the price is low. So I would encourage you, if you do have money set aside and you're interested in doing this, talk to your parents first, obviously. But now would be a great time to buy. I bought for my kids since the prices have been dropping so much. And then don't sell until you see a dramatic price increase. And for me, even if I see a dramatic price increase, I'm not going to sell unless it's something ridiculous, because I am buying this for the long term. I have bought these stocks for my retirement, maybe 20 years from now, something like that. All right, the fifth lesson for stocks is to start early, and I can't stress that enough. And to try to illustrate this, the earlier you start, the younger you are, the more time you have in the stock market growing, and growing off of your growth, the better. So I have a website here that kind of demonstrates this. So if, let's say, most of you are around 13 years old, most people are going to retire around the age of 67, typically. And let's say that you worked a summer job or you saved up some money somehow and were able to pull together $1,000. So you're 13 years old, you have $1,000, you buy a mutual fund and you invest in that, and it sits there for, well, till you're 67 years old. And let's say you don't add a penny more. You just leave that at zero. So $1,000 is all you have to invest. What happens if you make 7% growth on average, in general, for the stock market? What's going to happen? Well, you will have 43,000, that $1,000 that you put in stocks when you were 13 years old right now, when you are 67 and retired 54 years later, that will turn into $43,339. That's huge. Now, what would happen, though, if you waited till you were seniors to do this? Just waiting 5 years. Well, that $43,000 becomes only $30,000. You lost $13,000 by waiting just the 5 years. What if you waited till you were out of college? About 22 years old, if you go to college. Suddenly you lose another $7,000 from where you would be if you invested as a senior, and about $20,000 from where you could have been if you did this right now when you're 13. So let's go back to 13. Now let's say you give up $5 of expenses a week. So that's less than $1 a day. And, some of you maybe spend that just on pop, or if you get one coffee a week, that, typically costs maybe around $5. Or maybe break at school. Just little things like that. I think most people could pull together $5 a week. And if we, let me get out my calculator. If we take $5 a week, and there's 52 weeks in a year, so 5 times 52 is $260. But they want how much we will be putting away each month. So let's divide $260 for the whole year, divided by 12 months in a year. So that will be $21.66 or 67 cents. So let's just make it a simple $20. All right, so you're 13 years old, you're going to retire at 67. You work hard this summer and save $1,000, and then after that, you give up $5 a week worth of stuff. What will you have? What will your $43,000 be? $188,000 is where you will be. And again, let's see what would happen if you waited till you were senior to do this. So nothing changes except we're taking 5 years out of the picture. So losing 5 years, waiting 5 years, what does that cost you? Well, you go from $188,000 to, $132,000. That is a substantial decrease. That's what, $56,000 roughly. That is a ton of money. So this is the idea that I'm talking about when I talk about starting earlier. The earlier you start, the better. Now what would, just as a kind of crazy scenario, what if someone got you stocks when you were born? So you were 0. You were a newborn infant, and maybe your grandma says, I'm going to set aside $1,000 in stocks. What would happen? That $1,000 would turn into $107,000. Now what if, and some people do this, they say, $100,000. I wonder what would happen if I like what I'm doing. What if I wait one more year to retire? What if I retire at 68? Just waiting that 1 year, what happens to your $107,000? Wow, it just grew another $8,000 by waiting 1 year. Maybe you say, hey, I really like what I do. I'm going to wait till I'm 70. And then what happens? Well, $115,000 becomes $130,000. And so this is that principle that, again, start early. If you start early, man, it makes a big difference. There is one more lesson, sort of. Many people recommend, for the sake of your sanity, for peace of mind, you should not be checking your stocks daily. Some people regularly monitor, but when they see dramatic dips in the stock market, that just causes them to panic, and if they're not thinking clearly, the emotion can either steal your peace, or they might forget rule number 3 and 4 and say, these losses, they're scaring me. I know I'm supposed to sell when it's high, but I'm just going to sell now. So that would maybe be a reason not to check your stocks. Now, I do have a homework assignment. I hope you see that in Google Sheets. Your homework assignment is to send me a company that you would like to follow the stock of. So you will have 1,000 fake dollars that you will be investing in a stock of your choice, one stock. You'll send that to me today. That's Wednesday, April 1st. And I will find the price of that stock today, and we will follow and see kind of the fluctuations, the ups and downs, and hopefully we can see some of these things. All right, I do want to transfer now to another idea. The government says, you know what, buying stocks is a good thing. It's a very wise move. It helps you to prepare for retirement and be financially independent. So we are going to give you incentives to buy stocks to save for retirement. Again, the reason we're talking about this is because you need to really understand stocks to understand the 1920s and the Great Depression, which will be the next unit. And it's also a very useful thing to learn and understand because most people can't retire unless they have set aside money in the stock market. So the government has given two basic options to every single person in the United States. There's the traditional IRA, which stands for Individual Retirement Account, or there's the Roth IRA, the Roth Individual Retirement Account. In both of them, you can invest currently, for this year, you can invest up to $6,000. You can go less than that, but after $6,000, then these programs don't apply. So with the traditional IRA, you can invest $6,000 without paying any taxes on it. This is considered pre-tax money. So let's say you make $50,000, and oops, these numbers have changed because of updates to the law. Let's say you make $50,000. When you fill out your taxes, you can tell the government, oh, actually, $6,000 of that I wanted to put into stocks for my retirement account. And so on your tax form, you would actually say, I only made $44,000 because $6,000 of that, using this law that you created, $6,000 of that I'm putting to retirement, and so you can't charge taxes on that. This does mean, though, on the growth. So again, going back to this website, let's say you put that money in and it grows to a huge amount of money. So they would look at this and say, okay, you started with $1,000, you didn't put any additional money away in this scenario. So you made how much growth? Well, right here it shows you made $131,000 of growth. And if you were to take all of that money out, since you did a traditional IRA, you would have to pay taxes on the $131,396. So you don't pay taxes up front on that $6,000, but you do pay on the gains that you make, the growth. Well, eventually, someone in Congress, a man named Roth, said, you know what, that's good, and I appreciate that, but let's create another scenario. What if there are people that don't get charged much money when it comes to taxes? This isn't terribly helpful. If they fall into a low tax bracket, this isn't much of an incentive to save money. So they created the Roth IRA, which, same thing, you can invest $6,000 per year, but you do pay taxes on it right now, this year. So in my example, same example, let's say I make $50,000, I'm going to be taxed on $50,000. What's the benefit then? Well, when I pull that money out, so let's say, oh, I guess in this scenario it makes sense to switch it to $6,000. So let's do that. My $6,000 that I placed here when I'm 0 years old becomes almost $800,000. Well, what would the taxes on almost $800,000 be? It'd be very, very high. What's the tax right now on $6,000? Very, very little. It would actually be zero if that's all the income you made. If you made $50,000 and were single, you'd pay some taxes on it. If you're married, you would pay some taxes on it. If you're married with enough kids, you might not actually pay any taxes on $50,000. So the Roth IRA is a great option if you make a little bit of money now, not a ton, but you are putting money away in the stock market and hope for that to grow dramatically. So that's Roth IRA and traditional IRA, and hopefully that makes it clear. I would recommend if you are a young person, you should definitely go with a Roth IRA because you probably aren't making much in the way of money. If you do make even $6,000 in a year, that can all be omitted by the standard deduction. You get to subtract the first, what is it, some like $12,000 this year from your income. So even if you made $12,000, you would pay nothing in taxes. So a Roth IRA makes sense when you are young and don't have much money. Because if that grows to make to a lot of money, and you have more of an income when you are retired, then you will be paying taxes on that. There are three big companies if you're going to go for kind of low-cost services, not individualized at all. Vanguard, Fidelity, and Charles Schwab are the big kind of giants or players in the field. Now there's many others, like an Edward Jones, where they give you advice on how to invest, and they'll sit down and meet with you, and so you have to pay more for those services. So these three businesses are very big because they charge very, very, very little, but they don't sit down with you and they don't talk you through things. So that's something you're giving up then. Final thing I want to go over today is what causes a stock price to go up or down, to rise or to fall. And again, going back here, these are actual numbers. So what caused the stock price to fluctuate so much? Why is there almost over $5 difference here from the $23 high here to the little under $18 high here, or the $18 kind of low spot, or even the $16 low here? Why was there a $7 fluctuation on these dates? Well, let's look at some of those things. And a lot of people very they have misconceptions. I've heard students over and over the years say, "Ooh, chips and salsa or Doritos, it's Super Bowl, so their stock is going to go up." No. Or, "Oh, Disney just released Frozen 2, now their stock is going to shoot up." No, that's not how it works. Those are anticipated things. Stock markets rise and fall typically when there is something that is not anticipated, not predicted, that kind of surprises people, either for the better, and then the stock price goes up, or it's a bad surprise, and oops, and then the stock price will drop. So let's look at some of those things. So there's good and bad publicity. If you're in the news for some good reason, maybe you do something really nice, or there's an employee of yours that helps a little old lady or a tiny kid or something like that, that is great publicity, and that could cause a generation, it could generate business, interest, excitement, spending, that type of thing, or just your name has a better reputation, and so people perceive that as being good for your company. Bad publicity could be like the airline that kind of beat up someone and dragged them off of the plane, or Starbucks got in trouble for calling the police to kick people out because they didn't have coffee. And whether those were reasonable things or not reasonable things, it doesn't matter. It was portrayed negatively. It was bad publicity, and it hurt them, or at least has the ability to. So this could be also a recall, a scandal, a lawsuit that happens, a governmental action. Maybe the government does something that and condemns a company, says this is a bad company, how dare they do this. That can affect the price of your stock. It could be surprising news. Wow, we just stumbled upon this awesome thing, and we weren't expecting this, but wow, this is great. Or it could be surprising negative news. Oh no, who was expecting, coronavirus to come, and now no one wants to get on a cruise ship? That would be an example of bad publicity. Not even really a scandal, it's just no one wants to be in a tiny confined space with the coronavirus out. So this is a time when a lot of stuff A lot of these we can see in action right now. Talk of a merger almost always generates excitement and leads to an increase in the price of that stock. Quarterly earnings reports are huge. They're very important. So our year is divided up into 4 quarters, which is every 3 months. So every 3 months, companies make predictions about what they think their company will earn, how much business they'll do, how much profit, all of that. If people hit and meet these benchmarks, what they expect, then things will probably stay about the same. If they miss their earnings, oftentimes that's not good, and so the price will drop. If they surpass them dramatically, then the price could shoot up. There could be a lot of excitement. Wow, no one thought Apple would make that much money this quarter. Now again, the coronavirus is destroying people's quarterly estimations because they weren't anticipating, the end of the world and business being slowed down or businesses being required to be closed for customers. So this is causing all kinds of problems and could be a major reason for the drop in prices. Company leaders. If people perceive the leader or leaders of your company as being good or bad, that can help or hurt your stock. So Steve Jobs of Apple was kind of a legend. People really admired his leadership, and so when he got sick with cancer and had to take leave, and then he eventually died, the stock price dropped. People were concerned. Oh no, what if they can't find someone equally as talented as Steve Jobs? But people have since gained a certain amount of trust for their new leader, Tim Cook. So it's worked out now, but again, that's following these tips. If you saw that, oh no, Steve Jobs died, I better quickly sell. No, I'm buying for the long term, and the dip that happened in between, it's not going to cause me to panic and sell off Apple stocks. The way the press, the media, the news outlets, the way they cover your business can be helpful or hurtful. So let's take Chick-fil-A. All right, they had some bad publicity because the media presents them as being hateful just because they are a Christian business. And the leadership of the company, he spoke out about his faith, and that was considered a bad by some and a good by others. And so that's kind of the strange thing. Many people called for a boycott of Chick-fil-A because of the leadership being, in their eyes, bad. But some media said, no, look at how the liberal media is covering Chick-fil-A. We appreciate the good leadership and the openness about the man's faith, and so we need to get behind him. And so that led to some surprising news and some negative and good publicity, kind of like a tug of war. Who's going to win? Another thing that can cause a stock to rise would be a new product that they stumble across. Maybe, let's say, someone figures out self-driving cars, or Tesla releases a new vehicle that is ridiculously efficient and answers a bunch of problems and makes all other car manufacturers obsolete. That could be huge. Or what if Google Glasses took off? These glasses that have like computer screens in them. Or something like that. If there's some new technology that just blows people away, completely revolutionizes things, that could be enormously helpful to your stock price. And finally, the laws that get passed by our government. They can help or hurt. Maybe there's a bill that's specifically designed to help an industry. Oh, we feel really bad for, and then you just fill in the blank. So we're going to help them out, or we're going to stand behind them. Or there could be a law passed that's devastating and could completely destroy an industry. So these are the types of things that cause a stock to go up or to go down. A reminder, please get that stock, the company that you want to follow, to me today. That's your homework assignment, and I hope you're all doing well. Bye.